Hey, real quick before we get into this, there's been a big restock of my Eggman dice, which you can find on my website and linked in the description. We've got the rainbow dice, which this is going to be the last set that I have from this order, so if you guys want them, get them now. We also have this classic dice set, which I'll probably have more in rotation. I think I want to keep this one on the page often as just like the kind of the standard one, and also another restock on the tokens from EXP Share Collectibles. So make sure to check it out, link to the description, and enjoy the video. Hey everyone, Egman here with another video, and today we've got a top 16 breakdown for the OP10 case tournament that I held this past weekend. This was my first event in the OP10 format. It was with the new restrictions live, and we had 7 rounds of Swiss into a top 8 cut with 120 players, which I think is making this the largest OP10 event we've seen with the restrictions in the English version of the card game, which is just going to get blown away. It's not really an accomplishment, but I do want to just go over all the data that we've got, and I really am looking forward to it. So a couple things though before we get started. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of content for the One Piece card game, and we're going to be making even more once we start our regionals in this next weekend, at least here in North America. And then also, if you guys want to find any of the deck lists for this event or many others, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events. We're also going over store regional deck lists. You can find this in the tournament deck list, since these are harder to make, a single page for a single store tournament when I only get a couple of the deck lists. I've been just kind of throwing them on here so you guys can have access to it. But also I do have the Zulu store regionals, the entirety of their top 8, so you can check that out. That's on the page itself. It's right here, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already. But again, we're making a lot of data, a lot of content for this, and again, looking forward to see what this meta kind of develops into. So lastly, we did live stream this event. You can find it linked in the description. It's also on the page. I do want to shout out my co-commentator Xell for doing it with me. It was a lot of fun. And then lastly, a big shout out to our judges of CJ and Risu for helping run this event. We would not be able to do this without them either. But finally, let's jump on into this. We do have a top 16 with a lot of diversity. We did have, I think, 10 different leaders? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. One more than I was thinking. 11 different leaders across the top 16 with 3 Teach, 3 Shanks, 2 Purple Luffys, and then single copies of Dofi, Smoker from OP10. We have Bonney, Lucci, Lim, Uta, Marco, and Gecko Moria. So honestly, this is what I've been seeing from this format in general. A lot of people kind of have this issue where they don't really know what leader to play because there's just so many decks that are viable right now. There's just so many matchups you kind of have to consider that it doesn't really seem like there's one deck that's outwardly the best in this format. I think a lot of people are on Teach and Shanks and Purple Luffy, which we can see like that was kind of a third of this format, and it ended up being like half of Top Cut. So that was a pretty good conversion rate for them, but again, that's not anything like as bad as we've been seeing from previous metas, right? Like Dofi would be something like maybe 20 to 25% of the format, but it'd be almost 50% of a top cut. We're not seeing those kind of insane conversion rates from usage to top cut, just because I think again so many people are in so many different decks that there's nothing that's outrageously better, I think, than anything else. So I think that's something that's really cool for this format. It does make it difficult to decide what to play and how to counter everything when there's so much stuff around, but I do think that's something that's unique from this format from a lot of other ones we've seen previously as well. So there's also the fact that this is a unique format for us. There's going to be some time to kind of let the meta settle a little bit. We've been kind of playing it for almost a month now, so I know some people have been kind of deciding what decks they're playing and what their builds look like, but I do think there's still some chances to see some things happen at like a larger scale, which we do have these larger regionals at the end of the month once again. So we're going to go over every unique leader that we had, so 11, but we also did get some unique X2, so we have 4 additional leaders with Boa, Nami, the Usopp, and the PR Sanji, so you can check out those deck lists. But we're going to just jump on in through all of those, starting off with our first place list, which is Andy's version of Marshall.D.Teach. And if I was to say like what deck is the best right now, I think Teach would be like in a really good contention for it. I think Shanks is probably also there. I think those two, if they're not the best leaders, they're definitely the leaders that I think people are playing more than often, which is going to help them, I think, get a little bit more topping or like winning percentages because a couple more people are on it inherently. But I think there's a good reason for that for Teach. It's just a very strong deck. There's not a lot of diversity that you're afforded with deck building because you you do have to run such a strong package of the Blackbeard pirates, but I have been seeing some little things come here and there. We do have some new cards from OP10 in general. We've got the Shiryu, which has been honestly better than I thought in this format. The fact that you do get rid of a 3 cost does come up, I think, moderately often, but it's also kind of weird to remove sometimes. It is a 7k on your opponent's turn, so red decks have a hard time just kind of attacking into or getting the power reduction like they're normally used to, so I think that's something that's great with the Shiryu in particular. We also have Kuzan, and we don't have to talk about this card as much. You guys know this card is really, really good. So those are kind of like the 2 new cards. We do also see a good amount of this Katarina, I think in more recent weeks. This just has this activate main once per turn. If your leader has the Blackbeard Pirates type, this character gains double attack, banish, or blocker until the end of your opponent's next turn. So honestly, just to be able to be a larger blocker is really good. This is also a card you get to play off Kuzan, which is really nice. And then if you kind of need a race towards the end of the game, having that double attack is really good, and sometimes even like the banish just feels good if you're playing against something that one has like a lot of triggers, which comes up I think quite a bit. But just to kind of pressure into like the mid to late game if you end up kind of being there with this Devon on the field. So I think it's a really strong card. I think that it just demands a lot of respect, and it's been cool to see this kind of tech in, because this was an OP09 card that I don't think got seen in any builds for Blackbeard then. So I don't have much more to say. I think this is definitely one of the cornerstones for the format, if not the best deck in the format, one of the most present ones, and you definitely have to know how to play against this and what your matchup looks like if you're not able to play any of your late game on play effects. But here's the build from Andy, and congratulations for their first place with Marshall.D.Teach. And then second place, we did have James with Shanks. And again, I do think that, again, if these are not the best leaders in the game, I think these are going to be the most represented with Shanks and Teach. And Shanks, in kind of contrast though to Teach, where Teach really kind of has one centralizing build with a little kind of tech option sewn in. Shanks has a lot of different builds and a lot of kind of different engines that people are kind of using, right? We have kind of just like the no engine, like there's no kind of searching or anything. We have more of the red hair pirates, which I would say this one is. Usually it's a hallmark of that by playing Uta. We also see like some more aggressive builds or like straw hat builds. We also see like the animal builds. So it's really kind of tricky to categorize all these different Shanks lists, and it's something that I think most people are going to be playing a little bit different. There is kind of a lot of cards that are more cemented into it. I think our top end for most decks are the same. We're playing the 7 cost Beckman, we're playing the Silvers, we're playing Dragon, and we're playing 10 cost Shanks. I think these 4 are just pretty much in most Shanks decks at this time. The OP6 Shanks is played every once in a while, I think at 1 to 2 copies if you want to play it. Goldie Rogers not also a staple either, but some people do play it, and I do think just the fact that this card exists means your opponent has to play differently, which is really interesting, and if they don't, they can play into it, so that's something that's strong. There's also the fact that we don't have Red Hawk in this build, which generally is a decision point. I think that's something that some people have been playing. I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about Red Hawk. Sometimes it's like it feels like it's one of the better cards in my deck. Sometimes just the fact because the card exists, if I don't have anything better to do, I can like leave 2 Dawn open and make my opponent kind of have to play around it, which I think is impactful. And it's just like a really interesting decision for deck building. But also, again, since it exists and since it knowingly exists, you can kind of pretend that you have it, and your opponent has to respect it a lot of the time. So other than that, we also have the Divine Departure. Love this card. Think this is fantastic. And the fact that we can search it off the Uta is really good for just some additional counter if we need it, or some removal as well. And then we do have some new cards with like the Sanji and the Tony Chopper, just 2 generically good red cards at its base that let you be like a 2k that's also able to be a blocker pretty successfully. This being a 6k that you can block and then use your leader effect to get out of a 7k effect, or sorry, a 6k attack for 1. Is good because there's just so many times where people have to just attack 6Ks into you to try to like make you use your leader effect and discard another card, that this chopper just lets you get that value outright. So that's really good. And then Sanji, just to add some pressure, the draw is nice. I don't think this card is as needed in the deck, and I think that's fair to see it at 3 copies. But at the end of the day, you just kind of need to do something with your Dawn, I think, for Shanks. Which if you don't, you just have to put like 4 Dawn on your leader. That just feels bad on turn 2. I'd rather play Sanji, Chopper, or Lucky Roo and get that value there. So Not much more to say. I think Shanks has a lot of different variety in its deck building and its gameplay. On probably the lower end, late game Shanks gameplay is just really just choose the high end card that makes the most sense. But it's really cool to see all these different engines under this leader. So this is James's version of the build, and congratulations for their second place with the Shanks. The next up, we've got third place. So this is Giancarlo's version of the Dofi, and I didn't think that this deck was dead, and I've been saying that this is probably still one of the strongest leaders in this game right now. And because of mostly honestly, I think the strongest card in this deck is still the Marshall.D.Teach, right? Which we're only playing at 3 copies in this build as is, but this can just, set the tempo for a lot of games. There's not a lot of decks that respect the 2-cost removal, especially with Rob Lucci gone. You can say that this card stays on board a little bit more often, which is really good. I do think Hancock is still a fantastic card for not only just a 4-drop 6k body, but being able to hit us, hit bodies a little bit harder. And I for whatever reason, Weevil just seems like a better card right now. Like whenever my opponent plays Weevil off their leader, I'm like, oh man, that is just like hard to interact with. They get the card draw, and then they're hitting me with 6s next turn too. So I think like you still have your base of cards that are really good. You definitely do miss Jinbei, but there are some ways to kind of change how the deck works. And since we also kind of are forced to play a little bit more of these events, right? We do play 2 Gravity Blade, Raging Tiger, 2 copies of Gum Gum Red Rock, as well as the Femur. We had to find room for something for those too. So lastly, we do have the Kaido from OP05, the secret rare in this build. I did ask Giancarlo, and he did say that this is a card that was like not going to be in the deck, but ended up being in there just because they didn't have access to a 3rd Red Rock. So if you don't like the Kaido, you can play 3 Red Rocks and 2 Raging Tigers still. But it did end up making some sense in some matchups, and it's sometimes just like a card that is really hard to remove in a lot of cases. So I think that's really strong. Other than that, I think you guys know what Dofi kind of looks like. I think this is a really strong deck in this format still. And you do have to respect the amount of bodies that you're able to get out onto like turn 3 or 4. It's still a bit of a menace. But here's the build from Giancarlo. Congratulations for their finish with Dofi. And to wrap up the top 4, we do have the Monkey.D.Luffy, the purple one. So we did have 4 different leaders in the top 4 too, which I don't think I've mentioned yet, which is pretty cool to see that happening for an event this size as well. But I think Purple Luffy didn't really change as much from OP09. The only real difference I've been seeing people use a little bit more often is the Gamma Knife. This is a card that you can search off your 1-drop Trafalgar Law, since it looks for 2 costs or higher that are Heart Pirates are the Straw Hats. You can find that, so that's just, again, another target. But also the Don -1 to give one of your opponent's characters minus 5k. That ends up just kind of happening more often than not. Just being able to use this to get something in range. It also is great for like getting rid of like 8-drop Kid or pressuring that a little bit more. I've also seen it against like 10-drop Teach sometimes to make so their blockers isn't doing as much. I think it's a really good tech card. Also, if they hit it off like your first life, sometimes the ramp with the trigger effect just works out really nicely. So I think that's something, again, most people are kind of respecting in this build as well. Other than that, we're just playing the good purple straw hat cards. We do play like Eustace Captain Kidd for like our even curve if we end up doing that. I think most times we want to be on that odd curve though. We also do have like the Hitokiri. I've been seeing this card more often as a way to kind of interact with some like removal. This can get rid of Teach and some other like 2 drops and 1 drops. My only issue with this card is that this deck really can't play it, and then also you have the your turn on the same turn. There's nothing that gives you the Don minus at this, for 6 Don or less. So you kind of have to establish it first and then use a Don minus effect. The only way you can do it is with like Gamma Knife, which sometimes that pops up, but I think that's a little bit rare for what we're doing. But it is a kind of strategy that you can do for it. So it's not like the worst thing in the world, but it was something that I wasn't like, I don't know if it's kind of worth the hit for it. So I have seen some people play like other just searchable 2Ks as well that are just 4-drop 5Ks. So like Sashi and Penguin, even though you can't use its on play effect in this deck, the fact that you can use it and find it off of Law and also be a 4-drop 5K that's a 2K counter, I think that's something that can be impactful. But other than that, you know how Purple Luffy works. You just get to your big bodies and then you win because you have Gum Gum Giant, because this card is still really busted. I'm still surprised this is at 4 copies, not only here in England, in the English version, but also in the Japanese version, because it's been wrecking a lot more havoc over there. But I'll be interested to see how much longer this card survives at 4 copies. I know a lot of people are really seeing the impact of it now as we get into OP10. So I don't have much more to say, though. Purple Luffy's in a really good spot, I think, in this meta, and congratulations to Humberto for their finish with Purple Luffy. Breaking into the top 8, we did have 2 other unique leaders. So we've got Smoker from Georgios here, and this is one of my favorite leaders, if not my favorite leader introduced from OP10. It's just such, it gets so much value, right? The fact that we can easily get 12 Dawn turns towards the end of the game is fantastic. I think there's a lot of different ways to build this. I think red and green have some really complementary synergies, and there's just such a big card pool that Smoker can take advantage of that it's super great. Like the opponent's turn effect sometimes comes up. You really don't care about it that much, but if you're playing against a red deck, specifically this is an edge case, but I play like a lot of Marco, and man, it makes it that much harder to get removal on some of your cards, because the fact that this gives your Navy and your Punk Hazard type the plus 1k. But I think the new cards that I've been seeing more recently in these weeks are Carrot. This has been a really good card from OP08. The fact that you can play this, and also even if you play it on 6 Dawn, you can play it. You can put an extra Dawn underneath it. Even though it can't swing that turn, you can then get 2 Dawn back, so you can play it for 4 Dawn, essentially, if you want to think of it that way. Instead of like 2 Dawn to attach to your leader to swing 7k, or even have up for 10-layer Igloo. I think this card's been very, very strong in this meta too, being able to essentially either get out of one, plus 5k, or sorry, plus 4k deficit, which most people will be swinging at you with, or some kind of like mix between, if they kind of spread out their attacks into 2 7ks or something like that, you get out of 1 7k for free, and the other 7k you just have to pitch one more card. So I really do like this. This is also a Punk Hazard card, so it makes sure that your Virgo hits a little bit more often. And I just really like Smoker in this format. I think it's really cool. This is probably the standard way to play it. I've been seeing a lot of other builds kind of floating around too, and it's going to be interesting to see just how effective this deck is. I don't think it's consistent to be in tier 1 outright, but I think it's a good tier 1.5 format, or kind of 1.5 tier list placing for it. And again, it's a really cool deck once it gets working too. So here's the build here. Congratulations to Georgios for their top 8 finish. And then lastly, for our top 8, we do have one more green deck. It is Xavier with their copy of Bonney. And I think Bonney's in a pretty good spot right now. I originally put it in top 5 in this format. I think I would probably switch it with where I put Purple Luffy, and this was probably the 6th best leader in my opinion in this game right now. But it's really strong. I think it's the best that it's really been since release in OP07 almost a year ago. We get to take advantage of not like one Lucci being less present, or when Lucci is present, they don't get removal as much on the high end. You get a lot of like good defensive tools. Like it's a really obnoxious leader. And I think most people are playing cards to respect this card, right? This is a really polarizing card, I think, in this game right now. But the kind of effectiveness of it depends on people not expecting it in the format. I think most people right now are expecting that 8-drop Kid is a card that's going to happen against Smoker or Bonney or any other kind of green deck that exists. And so that's why like Dofi's playing more copies of Red Rock. We see Mulgun in red. And if you have any way to really get rid of this card, most decks are playing ways to do so. So I don't think it's a deck that's a card that like is like broken right now. I know some people are frustrated about it, and I do see that as well, but it's just super strong. And I think, but I don't think it's something that's going to break the game right now. So Bonney is definitely one of the better decks though to play defense with it, with also Rosinante as well as Tashigi being just really good defensive tools depending on what matchup you're kind of going into with it. And again, just a really strong way to kind of switch the game to your favor. So other than that, we kind of know what green looks like. I think Bonney's biggest weakness is kind of a little bit lack of consistency. Our only real card draw is Bonney, and we also have to play a lot of non-counter cards because pretty much anything that costs more than 7 has to go up in here. Even like we had to add more bricks since we are playing Smoker, which we are playing 4 copies of it in this build, which again, this card's not bad because we do get that Dawn active every turn, which means that we do have that 1 extra Dawn for our leader effect, which is really strong. So I don't have much more to say. I think Bonney is pretty good in this format, and congratulations to Xavier for their finish there. Breaking into the top 16, we have our first unique leader, which is Rob Lucci, piloted by Adrian for this event. And I think most people, including myself, are pretty pessimistic about Rob Lucci being viable in this post-restriction list format. Ice Age and I think Gecko Moria were 2 of the strongest cards in this deck and kind of cornerstones for it. And the entire playstyle that Rob Lucci was kind of going for, right? Being able to kind of get into this late game, have this kind of controlling removal aspect, and still having like the Gecko Moria to still pressure damage towards the end of the game, right? Just eventually be able to make it so my opponent can't do anything anything because we remove cards on their board before they can attack or get their effects off, and it was very, very strong. So I think that play style of Lucci was going to go away, and which as far as I've seen, it has, and it's needed to kind of transform into kind of like this mid-range kind of like value-based kind of or tempo-based kind of way to play it, which I do like. I do like this version of Lucci and kind of what it does. So the main idea for this one is we are kind of just playing these like 4 or 5s that just get value on play, right? Rob Lucci 4-drop is still a really good card for this deck. I think Rebecca still just gets so much value for the deck in general. It does enable a lot of our plays, and I think Rob Lucci is still the best leader in this game to take advantage of this card, specifically because we still do have the Spandine. This does let us, play Rebecca and then get Rebecca to essentially play a 4-drop Lucci, which is really good. So I think as long as that combo kind of survives, Lucci has a spot in the format, which is strong. One thing I've also noticed right now is that in previous builds with Gecko, Moria, and Ice Age around, the amount of cards in your trash was pretty trivial for most senses. You did have to kind of make sure that you kept the pieces that you wanted to recycle back in there. But now I feel like it's a little bit more of a resource. It's a little bit trickier for you to get 10 cards in your trash to be able to use the Tempest Kick. And even sometimes it's tricky to get cards in your trash to be able to have like 3 Cypher Pulls for your Spandine, your Spandine as well, which is important. So I think that's something that is different from this build specifically, is that you do have to kind of use your trash as more of a resource. But I think that's a really cool kind of takeaway from it, and kind of balances the deck more in this format as well. So I've been seeing a lot of different tech options for a lot of people as well. Specific ones for this one, we do have the Uta, which some people are still playing in the previous formats, especially with Innis Lobby banned. This was kind of like a backup version of Innis Lobby that can still get the minus character cost effect and can sometimes be hard to remove. Laboon, which I haven't seen in this deck in a while, but it can be really good at getting that reduction. We do also see the Tashigi, which you're not able to get that -4 cost, but you are able to play it and then get a removal of a 0 cost. So you can use this with like your leader attack and something like Tempest Kick to get rid of a 4 cost on play, which is still really good, especially since this does bypass protection and on KO effects. So that is still worth it in a card that is also just a 1k. So I think that's strong. Sometimes you also just don't mind playing this out. And if you don't like this card, you can just play the 5/6 Kaku instead of this too, which I've been seeing a lot of people play. And then most people are playing Kaido and Lucci anyways, but this is just a better kind of high-end card now. But I do think it's interesting to see no copies of 7-cost Jack in this deck right now. That is a really strong removal card that also does let us get removal outside of the Blackbeard, which is really strong, which is also just another way for Tashigi to shine. Being able to get rid of like Burgesses is a really great effect, even if your on plays can activate, since this is an activate main. And then our events that we're playing are the Hot Culture Patchwork, which you're able to use for like a secondary Tempest Kick, but also like if we don't have like the actual removal card to pair with this can just prevent like a 4 cost from attacking or something higher if you have additional reduction. So I think by itself is good, and the trigger from your life is not too bad. Tempest Kick as mentioned, and then also the Finger Pistol, which is a Cypher Pull card, and being able to put additional cards into your trash from the top of your deck, I think is a big boon for this deck too, so that helps out a lot. So I think there's going to be a lot of different builds of Rob Lucci that we see in the next little bit. I think it's really cool to see the innovations and people kind of rediscovering what this leader does and how it works in this format, and finding some success like we do see from Adrian as well. So not much more to say, but congratulations to Adrian for their finish with Rob Lucci. The next up we've got Lim. So this is Patrick's version of the deck, and I made a tier list video a couple of days ago, and I was likely a little bit too harsh on Lim with my placement in that video. I do think the deck is still strong, and my biggest issue with it is that I feared that there could be issues with it being consistent in a longer format, right? I think this deck is moderately dependent on 2 things. Going first, I think your first curve is like exponentially better than your going second curve. And the other thing is that the 1-drop Lim is such a helpful card that is kind of paramount for a lot of your matchups to be able to have, enough rested cards to be able to get your effects off. So if you don't have that happen, which statistically on like even a 7-round event like we had in Swiss, if that happens like once or twice, those games are just very uphill for you to be able to get the W on. So that was kind of my worry on like longer events. It's going to be, more often percentage wise for you to get into those scenarios. And that's been kind of my biggest qualm with Lim. But what if you do have that that happen, even like one of those things. I think going first is the paramount thing for Lim more times than not. But being able to get that extra advantage just helps you out again exponentially in a lot of ways. We do get to take advantage of a lot of new cards that came out of this set too, with the Newgate, the Mihawk, as well as the Enel. This card just letting you draw 3 and trash 2 is absurd. Like there's no actual like cost for this. Like it's kind of crazy just how easy you are to resolve this effect as well. And then the top end is kind of where I think a lot of people are finding a lot of different choices for it. I think these are kind of all the choices you can get right now. The only other one I'd say is like 8-drop Kid potentially, but audio to be able to like get like a 9-drop 9K that also lets you use some Don defensively, which is really good. Zoro, which I think is still like the best card to go into for this deck. I think turbo ramping for Zoro just is honestly the best way to play this deck still, because if you don't play this card on your above curve, since you ramp twice to get there, I feel like a lot of decks are going to be able to get removal on it if you play it any later. Still, even though like there's a chance for this to survive more often if you play it on a straight 9 without any ramping, I feel like if you play it a little bit earlier with your ramping that you get from this deck, it's going to stick and be a lot more impactful in a lot of those matchups. And then Shanks, I still think this card is really great since again we do ramp, so this just essentially gets rid of a lot of things that exist, and then 10-drop Dofi to kind of stall you out into one more turn. So I think this deck is still strong. I do also like the Trafalgar Law. This does let us find a couple cards, including our 9-drop Zoro. And sometimes we just need to be able to pay 1 to be able to get one more rested card on board to be able to activate some of our more effects. So it does find a lot of 2Ks. It does also find our Nico Robin 4-drop, as well as able to find our Zoro, which is really nice. So we don't have like a lot of targets for this. This card will miss a little bit often because there's not that many good Straw Hats or Heart Pirate cards for this to search into the Odyssey kind of sub package, but there are some, so it's kind of worth being played, even if it does miss. So I don't have much more to say, though. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Lim continues to do on these larger scale events, and congratulations to Patrick for their finish with Lim here. The next up, we've got Uta. So this is Logan's version of the build, and this is probably the first leader that we're going over today that I just strictly did not have on my tier list. Uta was not on my my radar at all. I do think that is a deck that does get better with the idea that that Dofi and Lucci are less present. I think those are kind of hard matches for Uta, where Dofi was just kind of doing the same thing but faster, being able to develop a bigger board and able to interact with a lot of Uta's cards. And Rob Lucci the same way. You just got a lot of removal and just made it difficult for Uta to do anything besides just get that draw 1 when swinging with leader. So I think this is a really unique build too. I do think there's some good matches for us. I think Shanks was the one that most people are saying that this deck has a pretty good matchup into, since one, we're always swinging 6K, so it kind of makes their opponent's leader effect a little bit null and void. And then they also, Shanks doesn't have like a great way to control the board a lot of the time, and because of that, we have a lot of ways to deal a lot of pressure. So we don't have that many new cards from this. I think our newest card is technically like this Uta that we got from Stardeck 16. This being able to be a blocker, but also being able to trash a film type card to help us get that extra Dawn to put on our leader. We don't even like lose the card draw, right? As long as we don't hit our misses in this deck, which are, I think, only Hody Jones. I think this is the only card that we have that we can't draw off our leader effect, and it's pretty much worth the cost. This card is fantastic. There's a lot of matchups where this just wins the game if it hits the board. Just the fact that you're playing green, your opponent has to respect that this card exists because, again, Hody is so impactful for game-ending plays. So the other nice thing is that this card is in this archetype searchable, since it is a film card. So this Shanks is fantastic. You get to see it, I think, on 9 Dawn very successfully because you get to search it and draw it off your leader effect. We also have Nami, which again lets you find any film off the top 3, which is this card can't miss. I think the only way you miss is this if the top 3 has a combination of Nami and Hody Jones, and that is very unlikely. If this is the only one you find, there's only 4 cards that you can have in your deck that you can miss with it. So this never missing also feels really good. So other than that, I think that this is an interesting deck in general. It's something that I would need to kind of go back and revisit in myself, and I'm curious to see if it's able to kind of get a foothold in this meta in general. So this is the build from Logan. Congratulations for their top 16 with Uta. The next up, we've got Marco, and if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you know that I'm a pretty big Marco fan. This has been one of my favorite decks, definitely my favorite deck to play in like the end of OP08, a little bit of OP09. I think my only reservation for playing this deck is the fact that Teach is very present, and we don't really have the best matchup into this format, right? We have so many cards that just say on play, right? There's so many on play cards that exist in this format in general for Marco that it's hard to actually do anything in the kind of late game. Like this card is never activating the entirety, which is kind of the cornerstone for where we get our late game value a lot of the time. So a bit of a shame. We do have Edward Newgate, which we still do get the activate main from this, so that does pop up sometimes to be able to get some removal. Unfortunately, the two cards we want to remove the most are Burgess and Kuzan, which those cards they just have the protection for the removal, so we can't even do that, right? The only way we can really get rid of a copy of Burgess if they play it early, and we can use our on play of Jozu still, are using the Red Rock, which we normally want to save for like a 10-drop Teach, and the Gravity Blade Raging Tiger, which this is really great. If they have two Burgesses out, we can just use this to get rid of both of them, which is strong, and I think that is kind of helpful for this one. So I do still think the Emporio package is the best way to play this deck right now, especially since there's a little bit less removal for this 3-drop Emporio. This just weirdly survives into a lot of endgame scenarios, and your opponent kind of has to respect it, or they just let you draw like 2 or 3 additional cards throughout the game, which comes out to be pretty handy. It's really good for trading into bodies, especially if you use your leader effect to make a 5k a 3k or a 6k a 4k. This gets pressure without any additional Dawn, so that's really strong. Monet has been one of my favorite new cards for this deck too, because we are able to like play it out for 2 kind of safely right now, knowing your opponent's not going to be able to interact with it. Emporio can play it off the top of your deck, and also the fact that, you know, this is great for being able to find, you know, make some plays. Like, for example, for 8 Dawn, if we need to play the silvers, and then we need to get like a reduction afterwards, we can do that, put the 2 Dawn underneath something, and get that effect. Like, this just lets you put a lot of things in a range that you wouldn't otherwise, and get a lot of extensions. So it's just really strong. So I don't have much more to say. I think that Marco's in a suspiciously close way to being viable in this format. I really hope it is. I really do like this deck. It's a lot of fun to play, and I just feel like there are some matchups that are kind of polarizing that makes it a little bit tough. But a fantastic run from Carmen with Marco, and really happy to see it get this top 16 finish. And to wrap up the top 16, we've got one more deck. It's Justice with their version of Gecko Moria, and another leader that I didn't have on my tier list earlier. Gecko Moria has been kind of in a weird spot, right? It was pretty viable in OP06. It did kind of lose its boss monster, right? Like 8-drop Moria was 8 archetype, and it was supposed to work with this leader more than anything else. But if I was being really honest about it, Gecko Moria wasn't even the best leader to take advantage of 8-drop Moria, right? I think Rob Lucci did a better job at getting the max value from it, and I think like Black and Yellow Luffy was better than at using 8-drop Moria too. It just got way more value than whatever this deck could do for it. So I do respect kind of the same thing that we see from Rob Lucci. We transitioned to more of a kind of tempo-based deck, in the fact that we are very we're in a really good spot to be able to establish a body and then also remove a body at the same time on kind of like the mid game with the copies of Absalom. This gets rid of a 2 or less, and we can use cards like Hina. We can use cards like the Shirahoshi that we're playing to get even like a 6 cost into range to be able to just play these big bodies and get the removal, while also being able to press a lot of damage. So I think that's a really cool way to kind of play this deck. And again, with 8-drop Moria getting banned, I was like, I don't know if I'd ever sleeve up this deck again. And with Justice's finish, I'm definitely way more interested as well. Another thing I want to mention is that we are playing 4 copies of Cerberus. I think this is just a really good blocker, right? The fact that we can find it off of the Hogback means that one, we can continue to keep our board extra wide. I think when we were watching one of the games during the live stream, I don't think our Moria player like really ever had like less than 3 cards on board like towards the late game. We were just really great at establishing bodies that were able to get a lot of value, and I think removals at a little bit of a higher premium right now, where it starts adding up when our opponent's able to continue to play these respectable bodies on the board too. So I think that's something that can keep coming up, which also means like Stussy is a really really good card when we, can easily just keep having cards on our board. You can pay the cost for this card incredibly easy, and there's less kind of KO protection that exists right now too. So I think this is great for getting some trades that your opponent's not really expecting at the same time. So last new card we'll talk about is the Gecko Moria. So this is from OP09, but on play up to 1 Thrill the Bark Pirates card with a cost of 2 or less from your Trash Rested. So obviously you can play that with the Cerberus, but we also do have the Anupe, which this is just a great card for kind of fixing our hand and getting into spots where we're able to like fill up our trash with the cards we need to. We don't net gain any cards, but it's just a great card to if your opponent KOs it, it's fantastic, and likely your opponents will not try to KO this at all, which means again it's a good sussy target for the late game. So in general, I think this is a really cool build. I'll have to try it out myself, but big shout outs to Justice for able to get an X2 finish in a top 16 with this Gecko Moria. And we've got 4 more decks, so these are all X2s. These are all decks that could get into the top 16. They just kind of bubbled out as well, and there are unique leaders as well that we haven't gone over. So we got Boa, so this is Boyi's version of the deck here, and kind of similar to Gecko Moria. I felt like Boa was kind of dependent on the value that Jinbei got for you to be able to get enough bodies on board so you could justify using Red Rock every turn to get that value. And this is a little bit of an interesting build where we do see 4 copies of Red Rock, which I don't think is that surprising. We also do see 4 copies of 3000 Worlds, which this card is fine, but we don't have any copies of Gravity Blade, which I think most people would say is a staple at a couple copies at least. So I think that's an interesting kind of choice for this deck, and I do think 3000 Worlds is likely just to be able to get rid of something like the Burgess. The fact that you also bottom deck and keep it out of rotation is really strong, and the fact that you get to play around the fact like Blackbeard. I think this can be a really good deck against Teach specifically because you have so much removal that isn't dependent on these on plays, and you can kind of go wider on the board too. So I have a lot of people who are Boa believers right now in this format. It's a deck that I haven't really tested myself out a lot, but you do see some kind of clues on why this can be successful, right? We do also get to take advantage of how good this 4-drop Law is, and we can kind of even plus off of it, right? Like we defend our hand early, we can play this 1-drop Sengoku, draw a card, and then if we bounce it back to our hand with our Trafalgar Law, as long as we have less than 5 cards after that, we get to draw another card, and then you can see where all that kind of advantage kind of starts happening in a lot of spots. So but again, I really think this is a unique build. There's a lot of, I think, tech cards are like staples, or cards that people would expect to be staples, right? We don't see Pudding either, which I'm surprised didn't get into the deck with a couple copies, but again, looks like they did pretty good without it too. So really interesting. I'd be really happy to see if Boa got a top 16 sometime during this regional season that we have upon us. And a big congratulations to Boyi for their finish with Boa. The next up, we've got Nami, and I will say most of the time Nami is pretty standard for what the builds look like, and this is still, I think, 40 something cards, the same as I've seen for a lot of Namis. But we are playing one new card, which is the Cavendish from OP10. This is a Dressrosa card, right? But this can be a good kind of early Dawn sync for the deck too. For 4, you get to play this out, and then it has this when attacking once per turn, you get to draw 2 cards and trash 1 from your hand. So not only do you get to cycle, but the fact that you get 2 more cards out of your deck is really fantastic for Nami in particular. And I think it just means you're playing against something more aggressive. You now have another attack to kind of go for their board and pressure their bodies on board too. So I think it's a unique kind of ad that I haven't seen a lot of other decks. We are also playing 2 copies of Mr. Hanger, which we do get the additional draw 1 trash. I don't think you're going to find a lot of Nami matchup mirrors in this format right now, but that is helpful for us. And then we still have the Nami from OP09, which is the first actual support card we've really kind of had since the release of this archetype. So I think this is still an okay deck. You do have to be careful about some of the more aggressive decks, but I think this is definitely still a format that Nami can top. And big congratulations to William for their finish there. Next up, we've got Usopp. So this is David's version of the deck, and this is probably one of the most in contention leaders for this format right now. I know a lot of people either believe in it or have just completely abandoned it in this format right now. This is probably one of the safer builds and kind of more standard builds for this deck. Most people are just kind of depending on 7-cost Rebecca, as well as we do have the 7-cost Luffy and the Kiros that we get to play off of it. And then for 4 drops, we have Frankie, Cavendish, Zoro, as well as the Sabo as well, if you want to add some more protection. So In general, I think this deck is good. It has some kind of polarizing matchups. I know a lot of people are still testing it and trying it in this format right now, and I'd be really curious to see how it continues to do as we get into these larger events. So I don't really have much more to say about this one. I think this is kind of again kind of standard for what Usopp builds are looking for right now. But a big congratulations to David for their X2 with the Usopp. And to wrap it up, we do have Sam. Sam is our last place in X2 land, but still had a great run with 5-2 with Sanji, and another leader that I did not have on my tier list. So I have been hearing some rumblings about this leader. This has kind of been the leader that a lot of people have been kind of hyping up in my own experience, where they're like, oh, this deck's gonna be insane, everything getting rushed, like this is the new Zoro. That's been a lot of like common talk I've been hearing because of how good this card, like giving rush in this game is pretty rare. So to have a leader just do it for free is pretty remarkable. So I do like how this build kind of looks. It is very Straw Hat focused, though we aren't playing the Straw Hat Searcher Nami, which I thought was a little bit interesting. We do get a lot of kind of support from the Star Deck 22 though. Specifically, we do have the Zoro, which we can this gets rushed no matter what now, which is really cool, and then has this on KO effect to be able to play something with 6k power or lower from our hand. That's not Zoro, so that means that we can play the Chopper off of it. We can play the Shaka, and we can also play the Monkey.D.Luffy, also from Star Deck 21, which inherently has rush, but the when attacking effect from this is really, really good. We do also have some like the 5/7 like King Do, just a really good vanilla for the advantage there. We have Wapple, which does have this great when attacking to get that change. So this becomes an 8k and gets something minus 2k, so you get some good pressure. We have Thatch again, another good vanilla for us. We have Ben Beckman, which we aren't able to get the rush with this are the silvers, but I think that's fine. And then the Rad Beam as well. So this Nami might have supposed to have been the other one. This is the list that they sent me. I wouldn't be too surprised if this is supposed to be the Searcher Nami, but also the fact that you do get the Dawn underneath itself and you can attack the turn it's played is really impactful. So last cards I'll mention, this Sanji is great. You just get to be a 6k attacker, and then your opponent, if they attack into it, you get to draw one, so that's really good. We also do have the Sanji from the Star Deck, which lets you choose one of your Straw Hat crews with 6k power or more. So you can't give it to itself, right? And you can't give it rush anyways because it does have the on play. But it's really easy to make any of your other kind of attackers, be able to attack the turn they're played. So you can, play this, even this Zoro, give it one Dawn, and then you're able to make it unblockable. So that's pretty cheap for it. And then the Monkey.D.Luffy from OP01. This just gets some like great benefits of, you can play it. You can give it 2 Dawn, so it's a 5k. You paid 2 and then you have a 5k rush attack, and that's just really good value. So I think that's really strong. I think this deck has a lot of cool little plays it gets to do, and it'll be interesting to see if Sanji is able to again get like a foothold in this meta, and seeing what people are kind of brewing with it. But this is Sam's version of the build, and congratulations for their finish with Sanji. But that's going to be it for us. Again, we've got a bunch of deck lists, a bunch of data you guys can look through. This format is really, really cool in the fact that I think there's a lot of different decks, and even within those decks, a lot of ways to build them. And we just have a lot of stuff we're going to be able to go through in the next couple weeks. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you again for everyone who showed up for the event. Thank you to Xell for being my co-commentator, as well as CJ and Risu for being our judges. And that's going to be it for me. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.